I walked into the realty office 20 minutes early with 2 coffees I had no business buying, and through the gap in the backroom door I saw Cass Bellamy, the woman who ended us 3 years ago with the words, "I never cried over anyone, Noah. Don't make me start lying now," sitting alone in the dark with her thumb moving up a phone screen, crying without a single sound, the way you cry when you've had years of practice hiding it. And on the screen, even from the doorway, I recognized the gray and blue of a text thread. My name was at the top of it. I should back up exactly one day, because the coffee needs explaining. My father died in the spring. He left me a house in the town I'd left 3 years ago. Left at high speed, if I'm honest. The way you leave a place where someone has just handed your heart back to you like a returned package. Undamaged. No longer needed. I'm a hospice nurse. I know how to sit with other people's grief for a living. It turns out that skill does not transfer to sorting your dead father's garage. So I hired the town's only realty office to sell the house, and the listing agent the office assigned me, this town has one stoplight and a sense of humor, was Cass. Our first meeting, the day before, had been 11 minutes of professional courtesy so rigid it creaked. Comps, timelines, a handshake like signing an armistice. She never cried over anyone. She'd told me so, at the end, with a face like still water. I had believed her for 3 years, in the way you believe things that break you. Thoroughly, and with interest. And now it was 7:40 a.m., and the office wasn't open, and the door I'd come to drop contracts through was unlocked, and Cass Bellamy was crying over a 3-year-old text thread with my name on it, and I did the only thing a coward with 2 coffees can do. I knocked on the doorframe. She moved like a soldier, phone face down, face wiped, spine assembled, all in the time it took the door to swing. "Noah," we said 9. "I brought coffee," I said uselessly. And then, because hospice teaches you exactly one thing about time, which is that you never have the amount of it you think you have, Cass. That was my name on that screen. For a second I watched her build the wall. I knew that wall. I'd hit it at speed once. And then something in her was just too tired to finish the masonry, and instead of a denial, she reached under the folder on her desk and slid a paper across it. Not to explain the phone. To replace it, I'd understand later. Cass has always paid one truth to protect a bigger one. The paper was a court notice. I read it twice. Probate court. Guardianship of Evelyn Bellamy, an incapacitated person. Notice of hearing. Petition to authorize sale of Ward's real property and transfer of Ward to out-of-state facility. Hearing date, 12 days. Evelyn, her grandmother, the woman who raised her, who taught me to play gin rummy and cheat at it, whose porch we'd spent 2 summers on, whose banana bread was the actual reason I'd proposed the town wasn't so bad. Sale of Ward's real property. Evelyn's house, the yellow one on Linden, with the piano. Transfer of Ward, Evelyn herself. Out of state in 12 days, her guardian is selling the house, Cass said, in the flat voice of a woman who has explained a nightmare so many times it's become a commute, and moving her to a memory campus 400 miles away, where the visitation policy is a web page and the waiting list for family calls is real. I checked. The hearings in 12 days. I've fought this woman for 3 years, Noah, and I have lost every single time, and I am out of money, out of lawyers, and out of... She stopped and looked at the phone, face down on the desk, and then at me, and finished the sentence differently than she'd started it. Out of practice, asking for help. My name is Noah Tran. I hold hands professionally at the ends of lives. I know what families look like when a system has been grinding them quietly for years. And I'm telling you, 12 days before that hearing, I thought I was staying to help save a house and a grandmother. I had no idea I was about to find out why Cass Bellamy actually ended us 3 years ago, or that the answer to that question and the evidence that would end a predator's career were hidden in the same place, inside the yellow house on Linden, which the Guardian was emptying with a clean-out crew in 6 days. Stay with me. This one has a piano in it. Here's the education I got over the next 24 hours, and I need you to sit with it. Because until it happens to your family, you will not believe this is legal. 3 years ago, Evelyn had what looked like a crisis, a fall, a bad stretch of confusion, a hospital stay. Cass was mid-move back to town to take care of her, 2 weeks out. Into that 2-week gap stepped a professional, Vera Kessler, of Kessler Fiduciary Services, court-appointed emergency guardian, petitioned for by the hospital's discharge office because no suitable family was available. Cass, in motion, boxes packed, was legally unavailable for 14 days, and by day 15, it no longer mattered. Emergency became permanent, and a permanent guardian of person and estate is, functionally, the ward. Vera controlled Evelyn's money, Evelyn's medical decisions, Evelyn's address, Evelyn's visitors. All of it stamped by an overloaded probate court that sees 80 files a morning and reads the summaries. "She's not a monster in a courtroom," Cass said, driving us to the care facility that afternoon. "My idea. I wanted to see Evelyn with my own clinical eyes. That's what you have to understand. She's lovely in a courtroom. Sensible shoes, binders, sad little smiles about families in conflict. The judge sees 40 guardians a month and she's the organized one. At the facility, clean, decent, understaffed like they all are, we got as far as the front desk before the wall came down. I wasn't on the approved visitor list. Cass was. For one supervised hour, twice a month. A schedule I watched her recite to the receptionist with her jaw set like it was load-bearing. The receptionist was kind about it. The kindness was worse. Taped by the sign-in binder, laminated, all visitation per guardian, no exceptions. I stood in that lobby doing math I hated. "Twice a month," I said in the car. "Cass, 3 years. You've seen her 70-some hours in 3 years?" "62, said Cass, who counts what she loves. There were suspensions. Her hands were at 10 and 2, her eyes were on the road, and her voice, when it came, had the sound of a thing being said for the first time. You want to know what the suspensions were for, Noah? The first one was for family agitation of the ward. 6 weeks, no visits. You know what agitated the ward? Somebody confronted Vera Kessler in a parking lot about Grand's med list and called her, what was it? A billing system wearing a person. She looked at me for 1 second, and 3 years of a locked room swung open an inch. It was a good line. It cost me 6 weeks of my grandmother's memory of my face, and it wasn't even mine. Because it was mine. 3 years ago, 2 weeks before she ended us. I'd met Vera Kessler exactly once. At a care conference I'd crashed as the concerned almost fiancé with a nursing license and a bad temper. And I'd seen a med list I didn't like. And I'd said so. In a parking lot. In exactly those words. The car was very quiet, and I felt the shape of something enormous underneath the last 3 years of my life. The way you feel a whale pass under a small boat. "Cass," I said, "what did she do after the parking lot?" "Not here," said Cass Bellamy, eyes forward, knuckles white. "You get that story at the house. There's something in the house you need to see first, before it's in a dumpster on Saturday, because that's the other notice, the one I didn't show you at the office. The clean-out crew comes Saturday morning. Vera's staging the house for sale before she's even got the sale order. Confidence is her whole business model." Her voice didn't break. It did something quieter and worse. It evened. 12 days to stop the hearing, 6 to search the house. Pick your clock, Noah. They're both ticking. The yellow house on Linden smelled like closed windows and lemon polish gone stale. A house on life support. Mail forwarded, water off, the piano wearing a bedsheet like a shroud. Cass had a key because realtors get keys. Vera had listed the clean-out with the same office, which is the kind of small-town irony that would be funny if it weren't a war. We stood in the living room where Evelyn had taught me to cheat at gin rummy, and Cass paid the debt she'd promised in the car. "After your parking lot speech, Vera requested a family dynamics review," she said. "Sounds like nothing. It's a filing. It says the ward's well-being is being compromised by conflictual family involvement, and it recommends restricted visitation, and it attaches everything, Noah. Your name. Your license number, a medical professional with no treating relationship attempting to interfere with the ward's care plan. A note that continued agitation would support transferring the ward to a facility better equipped to manage family conflict. 400 miles away. She didn't threaten me in a dark alley. She threatened me in a court filing, in the gentlest font you've ever seen." Cass ran her hand along the sheeted piano, not looking at me, getting it all out in order, like she'd rehearsed it against this exact wallpaper. And then she offered me a deal, in her office, with a box of tissues positioned exactly between us. If the family conflict resolved, if the agitating parties were no longer involved, she saw no reason for restrictions or transfers. She'd even add back my Tuesdays. Cass finally turned around. "She never said your name. She didn't have to. The price of my grandmother was you, Noah. So I paid it, and I knew that if I told you why, you'd go to war, you'd file complaints, you'd be magnificent, and Gran would wake up 400 miles away with neither of us on the list. So I told you the only lie big enough to make you leave and stay gone. She held my eyes and said it. 3 years late, in the house where I'd fallen for both of them. I never cried over anyone. Noah, I have cried over you twice a month for 3 years, in a parking lot, after supervised visits, on a schedule. I am, at this point, the most disciplined liar you have ever brought coffee to. I want to tell you I said something equal to it. What I actually did was cross that dusty living room and hold her, and she let me. 3 years of soldier posture coming down not all at once, but joint by joint, like a drawbridge. And against my collar she said the words that turned all of it, the grief and the fraud and the sheeted piano, into a single machine with one purpose. 6 days, Noah. Help me rob a dumpster before it exists. Then she stepped back, wiped her face with the heel of her hand, efficient, twice a month practiced, and told me what we were looking for. And this is reveal number 3, friends, so put your coffee down. Grand planned, before the decline. She was sharp as a tack and twice as suspicious. You remember, the woman audited her own church raffle. 9-10 years ago she went to old Harold Metz, the attorney, and did everything. A will, and a durable power of attorney naming me, and Mr. Metz told me this himself at her 80th birthday party, with cake in his hand. A guardian nomination. A signed document saying, if I'm ever incapacitated, the court should appoint Cass. It exists, Noah. It existed. But Metz died the winter before Grand's fall. His office closed, and when Vera petitioned, her paperwork swore, under oath, that no advance directives or nominations are known to exist. I told the court they did. The court asked me to produce them. Metz's files had gone to a successor attorney 2 counties over, who found the will but nothing else. And Gran, her voice caught its heel on something and kept walking. By then, Gran couldn't tell anyone where her copies were. I searched this house twice, 3 years ago, crying, badly. But Gran hid things. You know she did. She hid the Christmas money in the flour tin, we both said, and then we looked at each other, and then we looked at the house. Every drawer, every hollow, every book of the 40-year home of a sharp, suspicious woman who audited her own church raffle. And Cass said, Saturday morning, a crew empties all of it into a truck. And Vera's truck, more or less, so we search, nights. After my showings, after your garage, every night until we find it or Saturday finds us. And Vera can't just object to us being here? Cass smiled. For the first time in 3 years, the real one, the gin rummy cheat smile, and held up her realtor's lanyard. I'm the listing agent, Noah. Vera hired me to prep this house herself, cheaper than the firm in the city, and she liked the idea. I could tell. She savored it, making me broom clean my own grandmother's life. She clipped the lanyard on. So legally, I'm staging. Stage with me. We searched Monday night and found layers of a life. But before I get to what the house gave up, I have to give you Tuesday, because Tuesday is when I finally saw the machine's engine, and I saw it with the one set of eyes Vera Kessler never planned for. A nurse's. Tuesday was Cass's supervised hour. She asked the guardian's office for approval to bring her fiancé. We'd upgraded the cover story with clinical efficiency, and no, neither of us commented on it. We just both stood a little straighter, and approval came back with a fee attached. The supervision aide's extended time would be billed to the estate. Everything I'd learned was billed to the estate. Cass's own visits generated invoices. Her grandmother was being charged for the privilege of being visited by the person fighting for her. Evelyn Bellamy sat in a wing chair by the window, and friends, I've walked into 1,000 rooms at the end of 1,000 halls, and I know what I'm looking at. Cass had told me the story the record told. Advanced decline, minimal engagement, pleasantly confused. What I saw was a woman sedated. The tells were all there. The specific flatness, the hand tremor of the wrong cocktail, the way she surfaced for 4 astonishing seconds when Cass said, Gran. 4 seconds in which those eyes found her granddaughter and knew her completely, before the tide of whatever was in her chart pulled her back under. I asked the aide, casually, nurse to aide, how her mornings were. Oh, mornings, she's a different lady, he said. Dwayne, his tag said, and his eyes said he'd been waiting to say this to someone whose face looked like it could do something about it. Mornings before meds, she asks for Cassie, by name, tells me about a piano. He glanced at the door. You didn't hear the schedule from me, but visitation hours, supervised, guardian-approved afternoon visitation hours, are after the noon meds. Every time, like it's planned. like it's planned. A ward who's lucid in the mornings, visited only in the afternoons. Evaluated, I checked the file later. In the afternoons, by an assessor Vera's office scheduled. Chemical restraint isn't a dramatic phrase, friends. It's a checkbox pattern. And it was checked all over that chart. And it had a purpose. And Evelyn, who couldn't advocate, couldn't testify, couldn't say where the papers were. The fog wasn't her condition. The fog was a service, and the estate was being billed for it. I came out of that visit vibrating, and Cass drove us straight to the office of Carmen Silva, elder law attorney, one county over, recommended in a low voice by Dwayne, who it turned out had recommended her before. Carmen Silva listened to 40 minutes of us, took 9 pages of notes, and then said the paragraph that organized the war. Here's your hill. Guardianship removal needs the judge to see 3 things at once, because one at a time, she's seen them all before, and Vera's explained them all before. 1. Misconduct. Get me billing records against the facility's visitor sign-in logs. Guardians bill for wellness visits. Facilities log every entry. If Kessler's invoicing visits she never made, that's fraud with a paper trail. And under the court's own rules, you're entitled to the annual accountings, which I will have by Thursday. 2. A better alternative. That's the nomination, so find that document. A ward's own signed nomination flips the entire presumption, and if Kessler swore it didn't exist, it flips her credibility with it. 3. The ward's own voice. I know a geriatric psychiatrist who does independent evaluations. And Noah, if you're right about the mornings, we schedule it at 8 a.m. and we get Evelyn Bellamy on the record while she's home in her own head. She capped her pen. Hearings in 10 days. Cleanouts in 4. Go search a house. The house fought us and then it fed us. But first, Wednesday afternoon, I finally met the machine in person, because Vera Kessler summoned us to a pre-transition family care conference, and you do not decline a summons from the person who controls the visitor list. Her office was soothing the way funeral homes are soothing. Mauve, certificates, a candy dish nobody in history has touched. And Vera Kessler was exactly as advertised. Sensible shoes, 3 binders, and a voice like a warm bath being slowly drained. She served us a presentation. Literally, printed agenda. The transfer framed as Evelyn's exciting transition to a continuum of care campus. Glossy brochure with a fountain on it, a slide, titled Supporting Families Through Change. She expressed with a sad little smile how hard she knew this was for Cass. Given your attachment, in a tone that made attachment sound like a diagnosis. She noted, gently, that the 400-mile distance often actually improves family dynamics. Visits become quality over quantity. And then, agenda item 4, she turned to me, still smiling, and picked up a page she'd had waiting. And Mr. Tran, lovely to see you again after. Goodness, 3 years. I did want to mention the facility flagged your recent visit. A medical professional asking staff about medication schedules outside any treating relationship? She slid the page across. A printed incident note. My name in it. Dated Tuesday. I've asked them to document any recurrence. Licensing boards do prefer documentation. The smile never moved. I'm sure it won't come up. You both seem so much more settled than last time. Now, the moving company holds the date, so unless there are questions, I'll bill this conference to the estate and we'll see each other Tuesday week. In the parking lot, our parking lot, the historic site of my famous speech, I stood there shaking with the specific rage of being threatened in mauve, and Cass watched me have every feeling she'd already had for 3 years, and then said, quietly, now you know why I paid. That's what she does, Noah. She finds the thing you can't afford, my grandmother, your license, and she doesn't threaten it, she files it. Then she took my hand, deliberately, right there on the asphalt where the whole war started. Difference is, this time she's flagging a hospice nurse and a realtor with a lawyer, a whistleblower, 62 supervised hours of motive, and a key to the house. Bill that to the estate. We searched that night angrier and better. We searched in stages. Cass's system, room by room. Grand logic first. She hid by category, money went in food tins, papers went near sentiment. And while we searched, we talked. Careful at first, then not. I learned about her 3 years, the lawyers she'd emptied her savings on, the objection she'd filed pro se, alone, at a kitchen table, that earned back a fee letter informing her that her filing had cost the estate $1,900 in Guardian's response time, billed to Gran, a letter she'd kept and showed me, and which I read standing in Evelyn's hallway with the specific nausea of understanding the design. The system didn't just defeat objections, it taxed them. It made every act of love a line item against the person you loved, until fighting for your grandmother and bankrupting your grandmother became the same motion. That letter worked better than any threat, Cass said. For 8 months after it, I didn't file anything. I just visited, twice a month, and watched. I learned the town's sympathy had slowly curdled into that poor Bellamy girl, still fighting. She learned about mine. The hospice work, my father's slow leaving, the fact that I'd read her texts too. The whole archive, more times than I'd admit under oath. I know, she said, from inside a closet, muffled. You left them on read at 2 a.m., Noah. Read receipts. I have 3 years of timestamps of you not sleeping either. Silence from the closet. Then, it helped. God help me, it helped. Wednesday night, the house gave up its first secret. The flour tin held $800 and a note in Evelyn's hand. For Cassie's roof, when she finally buys the house on Maple, she keeps circling in the paper. Don't argue with me, I'm old. Cass sat down on the kitchen floor holding it, and laughed and cried at the same time, and said she knew. 3 years before any of this, she was already planning my life past her. She circled that listing with me one Sunday and never said a word about the tin. She looked up at me, streaming, grinning, a woman being loved by someone through a hidden note and a decade. You see what we're actually searching for, Noah? She hid provisions all over this house. She knew a fog was coming, hers or the world's, and she cashed against it like a general. The nomination's here. A woman who pre-funds her granddaughter's roof does not leave her own rescue to chance. I sat down next to her on the linoleum, and that's where we stayed for a while. Thursday, Carmen's subpoenaed accountings arrived, and I spent 4 hours cross-referencing invoices against the visitor logs Dwayne had, let's say, facilitated. And there it was. The fraud, boring and beautiful. 26 Guardian wellness visits billed at professional rates over 2 years, on dates when the facility's own sign-in system had no Vera Kessler in the building. Plus the flip, the last 3 houses Kessler Fiduciary had sold for wards, per the probate record, all bought below assessed value by the same LLC, which shared a registered address with, you're ahead of me, Vera's brother-in-law's renovation company. The machine, in full, isolate, sedate, bill, liquidate, flip. 40 wards over 11 years, we were not a family tragedy. We were inventory. And Friday night, the last night, clean out at 8 a.m., we still didn't have the nomination. We'd done every drawer, every book, the attic, the sewing box, both mattresses. Midnight came. Cass stood in the living room, exhausted, furious, and finally looked at the last thing in the house still wearing its sheet, the piano, and said, she never let anyone touch it, not to clean it, not to tune it. 40 years. Nobody touches Mama's piano. It went out of tune and she wouldn't call the man. And I always thought, Cass stopped. Her whole face changed. Noah, she wouldn't call the tuner. Gran loved that piano, and she let it go sour rather than let a stranger open it. We had the top board off in 4 minutes. And there, laid flat on the frame beside the strings, in a gallon zip bag gone amber with time, a bundle, the durable power of attorney, the healthcare directive, and one page, notarized, witnessed by Harold Metz himself, titled Nomination of Guardian, in which Evelyn Bellamy, being of sound mind and sharper penmanship than either of us, nominated, should she ever require a guardian, her granddaughter, Cassandra Bellamy, and then, because Evelyn audited church raffles and trusted no one incompletely, added in her own hand below the signature block. And if any court gives me to a stranger instead, know that I said this while I was still me, E.B. Cass read that line, and the sound she made, friends, I've sat at 100 bedsides and I have never heard anything like it. 3 years of a locked room, unlocking. She held the page to her chest with both hands, sank onto the piano bench, and the bench being a bench, and the piano being out of tune, and the night being what it was, she laughed through the crying, played a single sour chord like a fanfare, and said, Morning, Vera. Saturday, 7:55 a.m. The clean-out crew arrived to find the listing agent on the porch with a court runner beside her, serving notice of Carmen Silva's emergency motion, filed at 7:01, to stay the sale, stay the transfer, and set an expedited removal hearing, exhibits attached. The crew chief read it, shrugged the shrug of a man paid either way, and left. Vera called Cass at 8:20, and Cass, one-party consent, checked twice, Carmen on standby, put her on speaker in Evelyn's kitchen and let her run. The sensible shoes stayed on for 1 minute. Then, for the first time in 3 years, the voice underneath came out. You have no idea what these filings will cost the estate. Every hour I spend responding, I bill. Your little discovery project will bankrupt her before it frees her, and when it fails, and it will fail, sweetheart, I've survived 19 of these. The transfer happens anyway, and the first thing I'll reassess is your visitation, because clearly your involvement isn't therapeutic for anyone. And Cass Bellamy, sitting under her grandmother's kitchen clock, said pleasantly, Vera. One question before the hearing. The nomination Gran signed with Harold Metz. Your petition swore it didn't exist. Did you ever actually look, or did you just need it not to? A silence you could bill hours against. Then, there is no nomination. Okay, said Cass, sunnily. See you Tuesday. Bring the binders. Click. She looked at me. Got her denying it on tape, after service of a motion with the nomination attached as Exhibit A. Carmen said she'd do it. Carmen said confidence is a habit, and habits don't read exhibits. Monday, 8 a.m., the independent evaluation. The geriatric psychiatrist, Dwayne escorting, Carmen observing, and Evelyn Bellamy, pre-noon meds Evelyn, morning Evelyn, sat in her wing chair and came home in front of witnesses. Not fully. The decline is real. The fog was never all pharmacy, but she knew the date within a day. She knew her street. She asked the doctor to speak up, and then repeated his question back to him verbatim, tartly, to make a point. And when asked, on the record, if she understood what a guardian was and whether she had a preference, Evelyn Bellamy looked into the camera the way she used to look over a gin rummy hand she'd already won, and said, I wrote it down years ago and hid it where nobody but my Cassie would think. In the piano, dear. Nobody touches Mama's piano. Then, off some private satisfaction. Did she find it? And the psychiatrist, off script, said, yes, ma'am, she did. And Evelyn nodded once, and said the words that closed every case that mattered. Hers, ours, all of it. Course she did. That girl never stopped coming Tuesdays. You know she cried in the parking lot after? Every time. Thought I didn't know. A pause. Imperial. Somebody should marry that girl before she wastes any more Tuesdays. The hearing took 90 minutes. Judge Corliss, overloaded, honest, and visibly a person having a very bad morning discovering what her signature had been rubber stamping for 11 years, heard the billing audit first, and I watched her do the arithmetic on her own face. 26 phantom visits, professional rates, against sign-in logs from a system with key fob timestamps, which do not attend hearings but never lie at them. Vera's attorney offered that the logs may be incomplete. Carmen Silva offered the facility administrator present and sworn, who confirmed the fob system's audit trail with the weariness of a man who'd spent the weekend learning exactly what his logs were about to do. Then the LLC flips. Mapped on one exhibit, 3 wards houses, 1 buyer, 1 shared registered address. And Judge Corliss asked Vera directly whether she was aware of the relationship, and Vera began an answer involving the words arm's length. And the judge wrote something down, and the courtroom understood that the writing down was the event. Then the recorded call, there is no nomination, played against Exhibit A, notarized, witnessed, with Evelyn's handwritten line read into the record, know that I said this while I was still me. The courtroom went the particular kind of quiet that gets named after juries. Then the evaluation video, morning Evelyn, tart and present, in the piano dear. And finally Dwayne, who testified in his work shirt and said the sentence the local paper put in its headline, mornings, she asks for her granddaughter. I figured somebody in a courtroom should finally hear that. Vera Kessler's attorney requested a recess to explore a structured transition of the guardianship. Judge Corliss declined to explore. Vera was removed as guardian by lunch, her 19 other active files ordered reviewed, the whole record referred to the Attorney General's Elder Justice Unit, where, per last month's paper, it is thriving, and the guardianship itself restructured with Cassandra Bellamy appointed per the nomination, effective immediately, the judge adding, for the record, in a voice aimed at 11 years of morning dockets, this court relies on the honesty of its fiduciaries because it must. Ms. Kessler has spent that reliance. The court will be rereading its files. Vera left by the side door. Nobody got a last word. Some people forfeit theirs. Evelyn came home to the Yellow House in October, Home care, morning schedule, meds rebuilt over 6 careful weeks by a physician who works for her instead of around her. And I want to be honest with you about what came back and what didn't, because this genre owes people the truth. The decline is real, the fog still rolls in most afternoons, and there are days the piano is just furniture to her. But the mornings are hers again. Wide and tart and full of opinions. And the first thing she did in her own living room, on her first morning home, was run her hand down the piano and say, "Still sour. Now call the man." The tuner came Thursday and stayed for banana bread, because some institutions survive everything. The Christmas money went back in the flour tin, minus $800, because Cass finally bought the little house on Maple, walking distance from Linden, per the buyer's one non-negotiable criterion, and when she tried to refuse the tin money, Evelyn said, "Don't argue with me, I'm old," which is, in the Bellamy family, a closing argument. And me? I never sold my father's house. Turns out I wasn't back to leave. I run home hospice for the county now, and I know every long driveway in this town, and twice a month, old habits, kept on purpose, I take a supervised hour off and play gin rummy with a woman who still cheats and still wins. The texts, though. You've been waiting for the texts, and fair enough, that's where you came in. A week after the hearing, my phone buzzed. Cass. First text in 3 years, the thread resurrecting itself at the top of my screen like a drawbridge coming down. And it said, "I read them all again last night. All 3 years. For the first time not in a parking lot, not crying, not rationing." You want to know what I found? I typed "what" with my heart in my throat. And Cass Bellamy, from her new porch on Maple, 4 minutes walk from where I was standing on Linden, I could nearly see her light, sent the last text of the old thread and the first text of the new one. Not one of them ever said goodbye. 3 years, Noah. You never once said it. Come over. I'm done making you leave. I want the record to show I walked. Fast, but I walked. And she was on the porch, and she stood up, and she said out loud, "No screen between us ever again. I told you once I never cried over anyone." Her chin came up. The soldier and the gin rummy cheat and the girl from the parking lot all in one face. I lied. Professionally. For 3 years over one person, on a schedule. She stepped down into the yard. "Ask me who." "Who?" I said. "Come here," said Cass Bellamy, "and I'll show you the timestamps." Evelyn found out the way grandmothers find out everything. First, from the window, allegedly by coincidence, and at Sunday dinner she dealt 3 hands of gin rummy, looked at us over her cards, and delivered the blessing exactly as herself. Took you long enough. Both of you. Now, somebody's about to lose this hand, and it isn't me. It wasn't. It never is. Some things in this world you can count on. The fog lifts in the mornings. The piano keeps what you give it. And Evelyn Bellamy has never once in her life been out of moves. All right, comments. This one comes with homework and I want it done. If the person you lost told you the breakup was a lie, that they traded you away to protect someone they loved, and cried over you on a schedule for years, what's the first question you'd ask them, and what are you afraid the answer would be? And here's the heavier one because this story runs on it. Who in your family got quieter than they should have? A grandparent? A parent? Someone whose fog came on a little too conveniently, whose visits got a little too supervised? And what stopped you from asking the second question? Tell me who they were and the moment you knew something was off. Somebody in this comment section is one probate record search away from finding their own Exhibit A, and your comment might be what sends them to the courthouse. If this one stayed with you, subscribe and hit the bell, because next week I'm telling you what the Elder Justice Unit found when they opened Vera Kessler's storage unit. 40 wards worth of missing family documents, filed alphabetically, including a nomination with a name on it that made the investigator call Carmen Silva at midnight, visit in the mornings, check the piano, and never trust a fog that keeps office hours.